for everyone that doesn't know, Michael's works at University of Michigan, and then I'm from about maybe 40 minutes outside of there. So it's a campus I know very well. And Michael's, I don't know, it's not your exact title, but I'm calling you the leading AR VR researcher on campus. So I think that qualifies.
Yeah, they would not. Yeah, you don't get that title, but I've been pretty active, and um, I feel like maybe I'm a little bit like you, like trying to connect people, know everybody, kind of thing.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I thought today's going to be very cool. Hey, Ron. Today's going to be cool. We're going to really nerd out on VR. Michael and I met maybe 6 weeks ago. I think we had our first call.
hmm
And, we've done a lot of founder specific stuff, fundraising stuff, marketing stuff over the last few weeks with the group. But it's a group of VR people. And so we don't get to nerd out really on the psychology of it and the technology and the stuff that I think all attracted us in the first place is kind of like the impact that's going to have on humans when it actually works. So this call should be very cool because we're going to talk more about the like crazy vision of where this is going and hopefully back it up with some of the research and the experiments that you've been running over there at Michigan. So we're excited to have you and thank you for coming.
sounds good. Hello, everyone.
Hello. Um, so let's maybe everyone here is building VR, uh, VR, AR. I use it interchangeably, XR. So Michael, can you walk through like do you have a big building on the University of Michigan campus where there's like 100 different headsets and optics displays and research labs, or can you maybe like visually walk us through what does it look like when you walk into the office? Because that'll kind of give people a good perspective on how immersed you are in a lot of this stuff, I think.
Okay, so so right now, so what you described is what I remember from my days at Meta. I was there for a year on sabbatical, and I saw lots of interesting audio, optics, whatnot demos. So at Michigan, the biggest and coolest thing we have is an XR stage. It's a $2 million installation that is used primarily to use immersive technology to create online courses, MOOCs. And so it'll be like the Mandalorian style virtual production. That is the coolest XR thing we have. Otherwise, we do have a lot of headsets on the wall. I do not deal with it directly. This is teaching support. We do have one bigger 22 or 24 workstation room. They're all Quest Pros right now. I still think it's a
And it is
at the time I didn't think it was a good investment, but I do like it for my courses that I teach because I can do eye tracking, I can do mixed reality pass through, AR stuff, and students used to do a lot of mobile AR, and I'm just not as excited about mobile AR. So with the Quest headsets, I feel like we can do some really cool things in the classroom. Otherwise, and then if you visit my lab, it looks like a normal room. I think can maybe fit 10 people. It's not that big. And then we have a lot of devices that are just lying around. Most of them full of dust.
so do
So
you so you have a yeah, unfortunately that's that's the curse of the industry. Do you have like literally a classroom with 24 desks with 24 headsets, all Quest Pros, and students
there
come
are
there
height
there?
adjustable and good space between them. Um, there are 24, I think. On a good day, maybe 18 of them are actually working.
Hmm.
They have some kind of like interesting cloud paging solution to not to have to deal with updates all the time, but it's not that compatible
Do
with
you
any of
use
the meta things.
Manage XR, the platform to
I'm
do
not
that?
sure exactly. I think we started a pilot with Meta. I don't know what it's called. It's some kind of like Meta educational thingy, and I don't know what it's called. And I don't know how compatible that is with what they had before, but it's some kind of remote management, let's say. In reality, it needs a guy who comes to your desk and enters a password.
And so you teach these students how to code from the ground up. You're teaching them how to build VR games,
I
and
have two
also
classes. I teach a very broad variety of students. Many of them are not computer scientists. They want to learn about interaction design, user experience design, and I teach my courses not a traditional computer graphics route, but really more like user experience design for XR. So in the two courses I have, there's a foundational course that is required. We also have an XR certificate. So all master students across the University of Michigan can actually take an XR graduate certificate. That is a specialization, gives you a transcript, tells you you are specialized in XR. And the only required course I teach it, and that is an interaction design for AR VR. So they do a lot of like, I'm not sure how interesting you find it, but like paper prototyping for XR, using Play-Doh for 3D modeling, using specific transparency and 360 kind of like grids to sketch experiences around the user, but on paper, and then bring them to life in a headset with a couple of tools I've developed use for
Why
live
on
streaming.
earth are you prototyping VR with paper? That doesn't make any sense.
Because because it's fast. It's fast, it's cheap, it allows you to
Does
iterate
anyone
quickly.
else do that, or does everybody
I
use
wonder,
Inga's Shapes XR product?
somebody is in
Mike, you
favor.
Mike, you prototype with paper? Really? Can you tell us about
Mike is
really?
my man.
Paper, clay, everything. It's the whole part of creative collaboration. You don't want to be strapped down to one device or one platform. You want to be able to use what you know and be able to do it rapidly. The trick is for us with Rethink has been how do we capture that and bring that in and make it collaborative. Um, so it's been a lot of scanning and doing that sort of stuff to kind of bring things into a virtual environment. But yeah, you have to scan, you have to use the everything around you. Otherwise, it's kind of useless.
And is that in supplement to building an app with Shapes XR, or is this like a pre-process to prototyping in Shapes XR?
Um, so so it's really early
Mike, that's
stage
for both
design.
mics.
So my perspective is, what I'm curious if Mike thinks. Um, the level of fidelity that you can reach depends on like the tools they use for preview and like really capture of the paper materials. And I have like tools to live stream to headsets, and in some examples I brought like a butterfly on paper. I brought it alive. It's like flying around you. You don't even see it's paper anymore when you use some of the techniques and tools I've developed in research. But ShapesXR is a really, really popular tool among my students. It does require the usage of VR headsets. In a course, I teach about 200 students a year. There's always somebody that's motion sick, and so I cannot require that they use headsets. So it's I also, that's the other thing. I'm not sure whether Mike agrees, but like on paper, it's like really accessible to anybody. I mean, of course, unless you're blind or low vision or something like this, but like um, it's a very accessible tool. Anyway, I also teach Unity, so don't worry. And I focus on, I really teach rapid prototyping. Like this idea, find the fastest way to the experience. And that is not Unity in most cases. However, it has become much better. The building blocks in Unity are really powerful. We are creating, the latest thing we're doing right now, I have two journalists on campus. They are on a fellowship, and we are creating an XR journalist safety training app. In my more advanced course, it's for the students really learned over 7 weeks how to develop both AR and VR experiences in Unity. And now they're taking on this larger project where they will work in teams and develop two kinds of like scenarios that journalists can experience before they go out into the field. It turns out that many of them do not receive training in time. And so you would think that AR, VR, especially, I mean, VR, I guess in this case, is
So
a good
they,
tool.
so the you're saying the journalists, let's say they go to somewhere dangerous or
Yeah.
somewhere
Mhm.
abroad that's dangerous. Your students are creating
Yeah,
prototypes
we are
in
partnering. We're
VR.
partnering up with the two journalists. They're paired with our course, and one of the journalists, it took her 8 years to receive the training. It is usually done in a very kind of like ex-military, people come in and kidnap you,
Yep.
and then you experience this, and sometimes you have to abort. It just becomes too if it goes like over multiple days. But it does take a long time for them to receive the training, and it's limited, it's very expensive, and so it has all these qualities that maybe some of us think about when we create AR VR experiences. We want to oftentimes we want to make something more accessible. I don't necessarily mean like from an accessibility perspective, like for specific user populations, but just like making it more readily available. And so this project is interesting. So we have two scenarios: extreme weather and civil unrest. And with the current situation in the US, none of these scenarios are easy to work on. And so I also developed alternatives for students to create scenes that would allow you to debrief or to pre-plan. So before you go into the VR experience, or when you come out of the VR experience, to kind of like reflect on your thoughts. I don't actually have the solution that we will do. I just know that we'll have teams of students working on like this whole before, while you're doing the VR, and after the VR experience. And the journalists are very excited. We also work with somebody, a professor in trauma, specialized in trauma. And so it's a very cool. I wished I had more progress, but like I'm really excited about this right now. It's not a research project, but it's like embedded in my teaching, and so it's cool. Yeah.
So two questions. I mean, everyone here eventually either needs to hire talented devs or is currently hiring. So you basically have 200, kids out of college that are prepared
Mm.
to be hired by a VR company. Is that true,
I would
more
say
or less?
I would say that 10% are really like, this is XR. I really want to do this. This is my thing. I came here to do this. I want to do this. 90% of them, I feel, well, let's say maybe if I look at like the 30%, 40%, then they're really excited, but I'm not sure whether they really think this is the career for them. And then the rest are just not so good.
Which is not good.
I mean, I still like them and everything, but
Yeah.
like, you know what I mean. You know what I mean. They're just
That's
doing it for the
funny.
credit, kind of. They're not really picking up on
10,
the
10% is pretty good. That's 20 people. Yeah, that's funny.
20 really strong people who then go to internships at Google, Microsoft, Meta.
And do you have a
Um,
hiring system like where you can
um,
say, hey, these are the top 20 that founders can look at as well?
I do have primarily contacts in research and industry, so the pipeline isn't directly like from me to specific product-oriented roles.
Gotcha.
Um, but it has happened. I think internship is usually the like you get a recommendation from me, maybe you land an internship position, and then it's on them. And actually, many of them have been
Sure.
successful. So I think it's their to their credit. It's not really my
But
doing.
if I'm anyone listening on this call right now, I would make a mental note that Michael has access to some very talented developers that you can work with on an internship basis that they'll benefit and you'll benefit. Like I think that's something that would be really cool if you have the right
Actually,
startup.
to be honest, we have a course requirement that's an internship, and I mean, I think the expectation is, especially if students have to move, to somehow support them financially. Many of them actually choose startups. Sometimes they do it remotely, um, and sometimes they can receive funding from the school. Even I don't think it's like super scalable solution, but like yeah. The other thing that I think, so in terms of talent, I'm not sure. It's also a challenge for me. Like I have the courses, trying to create a pipeline, getting the students out of the courses into my research group and stuff like that. But we also have another thing on campus, and I'm wondering how many of you think about how you think about these things. But like we have like a game design club. It's really popular. The students really geek out, and sometimes they do AR VR. It's primarily a 3D, and but I feel like they have a really really good foundation, and they can be very productive. And so the game design club, it's called Wolverine Soft that we have in Michigan, that creates a lot of talent. Um, yeah, and so I have like a mix of students in my group. Some of them are excited about research. Some of them are just want to create cool experience, cool demos. Like they really like building cool demos. And I think this demo or die culture is actually not bad in the startup environment. So yeah.
What was that last sentence? You broke up there. What'd you say?
Oh, I said demo or die.
Demo or die? Yeah.
It's like an MIT model, but it is.
There's this kid named Ian Cinnamon. It was Ian Cinnamon and Bruno Faviaro, and I met them when they were in college years ago, like 10 years ago. I
Okay.
think the one was Stanford, the one was MIT, but they were doing the interaction lab stuff. Um,
Hmm.
and like as freshmen, like really early on in the Zynga days, they interned for Zynga, uh, and you know, ended. I don't think it was paid, but it set them up for success basically their whole career. The one kid just raised $80 million for his defense tech company, and he's like 30.
Wow.
But yeah, it's like the talent that can come out of a program like that that you can work with for free is pretty insane. Like think about how much you're training each one of these students, and yeah, so I do think it's a worthwhile opportunity for people to
So
explore.
how do you guys think about it when you hear like they raised 80? Are you like, oh, it's just 80? Or is it like, wow, it's 80? Because I remember Bazy. So my students use Bazy. And like it came out of nowhere. It's like some prototyping software from ex-Meta people. And one of my assistants was like, hey, there's this new thing, should we try it out? And then my students used it, and then they posted on LinkedIn, and then the CEO and all these people kind of like connected with them, and it became like a really interesting. We support them a little bit. They didn't really support us, but like I mean, it gives me a tool. It's cool. And then they got $6 million, and 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 I'm not sure. I mean, it sounds like a lot of money, right? Like if I had 6 million in my pocket, woo!
It's
But
here, I'll show you what they're building. It's pretty insane. So like again, this person
oh,
started from
Apex, okay.
an internship at Zynga. Look at how insane this
Mhm.
business is. So they raised 80 million bucks. You can
Mhm.
custom build your own satellites like it's a Nike shoe. So like do you want a GEO or LEO? I don't know what either one of those satellites are. Do you want an emulator? Like sure, add that. I want high
Where's the
power.
prize?
Okay, and then you can check out for like $4.8 million. I can check out right here on the website. The most so I think they're look at all this stuff. I don't even know what any of this means. So I think they're doing some real revenue. And probably that 80 million is not enough for them to do what they need to
Okay.
do. But
Hmm.
then also there's other companies that I see that have raised 20 million. I'm like, wait, what? They don't have anything. So it's all over and in between.
So
That's
don't order this.
so do you
Doesn't look
so
like.
you know one of the hardest things for the industry is commercializing. Um, so like for example, you have the project where you're building um like basically you so we'll take the journalism one. Okay, out of the example.
Mhm.
So, you know, who pays for that? Obviously it's like the school funds that and you know, there's no customer revenue in that scenario, correct? It's purely just
So that is, yeah, I don't know. So I don't have any super successful like from this kind of like entrepreneurship perspective. So it's basically like a lot of my things. It's an idea, and then there's a lot of volunteering and a lot of like free hours. Like in my case, I got excited. I want to support this, so I invited the journalists. They dedicate their time. Um, the students will dedicate kind of like their, I guess, their creative things, and so
Mhm.
they will sign agreements. The goal is to take it back to ABC. ABC is owned by Disney. So I also had like friends from Disney around when we started discussing this idea. So then Disney was excited, Disney Studios actually. And but it's like with many things, they got excited and I keep updating them, but they're not really buying into the idea or supporting it. But like I mean, I guess when it's there, maybe we can be a bit more aggressive. But like I must say, and you probably think, Michael, that's a lot of waste what you're doing. I have never really pursued or like had the ambition to make something out of this stuff. Like I publish the ideas, I share it with the research community. I like giving demos, I like receiving feedback. We did have discussions with Oculus and Adobe or about some of my prototyping tools that our Office of Tech Transfer did. I didn't really talk to them myself, but it just didn't lead to anything. And like there was no buy-in. And Adobe's products, like in the XR space, are like pretty rudimentary, I would say. And so there's no real commitment. Oculus, I mean, they had to leave Oculus to start Basi. Like they couldn't even do it within Meta. The tools that Meta support, like creates, are like I feel like as creators, you often complain about the ecosystem that's actually there. And so it's through startups primarily that we get to see some really cool things. But yeah, I am a loser when it comes to entrepreneurship.
No, you've chosen a different game. So,
Yeah.
can you share like what is some of the research you're doing from a human psychology standpoint? Like when we had our phone call, we talked about, or maybe
Yeah,
not
yeah,
something you've
yeah.
done. Yeah, go for it.
Well, so I am so personally, and I'm not sure whether it's true money-wise, but like I believe more in the future of augmented reality. I believe that we will have these glasses, whether or not they will have a lot of display, like visual display capabilities. That's something that I'm still experimenting with. I have created solutions that are primarily audio haptic based, so like you have no visual display. I have a master thesis where I'm looking primarily at like what if you had AR glasses, but they only work with your peripheral vision, but they're not like Google Glass, because Google Glass, it wasn't peripheral vision, but you had to look at it. And so that doesn't actually make a lot of sense, because it kind of like you always go cross-eyed, you always go there. And so we're designing things so that you can actually see things through your peripheral vision. So you don't even look at the display, you just see it through peripheral vision. And so we're like experimenting. Very excited about this, like 100% objects that you're looking at in the real world with your eye tracking. We have a simulation in a VR system. We don't actually have it deployed as a functioning like hardware prototype, but like basically simulating the world as you see it, but using virtual reality with pass-through, and then simulating how a display, an augmented reality display that's monocular, should render these objects so that it becomes like an assistive technology. It's like a device. Like you cannot read text this way, but you can create context this way. Like you understand what the user will know that the computer has registered what you're looking at, and so you can directly make queries about it. With the Ray-Ban right now, you have kind of like a wearable AI solution, but you don't actually have a visual display. You have an audio display, but the interaction cycle is just the interaction loop is very like it's action response driven. So it's not assisting. It's like reactive. It's not proactive.
Can
And
the
so yeah.
I don't know this technically. Can the Ray-Bans, the Meta Ray-Bans, see
Mhm.
something and recognize it or
Yeah,
not yet?
they have cameras. They have cameras, actually two cameras.
But
And they
they are
can
recognizing it. It's not because I thought it
so
was
they're
just a
like
video
they're not
feed.
always on. Like you say like, hey, what do you see? And then it'll take a picture, you hear some sound, and then or like and then it would actually say you're looking at a Zoom call and there's like 8 people and a few of them are not connected, or like it can like I used it to give me strategy tips with StarCraft. Like it's a
In
real-time strategy
StarCraft,
game.
like while
Yeah,
you're
it's like
playing live.
yeah, but you always have to ask it. Like they have just recently enabled a new feature which is called live translation. So technically, and that's something I've been excited about for my mom. She doesn't speak English, and so like she visited me last year in the US, and it would have been cool to give her the Ray-Ban, but I didn't have it. Like I had the Ray-Ban, but they didn't have the software. But the idea is that you can have live translation. So they would listen in, the mics are on, and would actually translate to you what people say to you in English. Yeah.
That was a big thing at CES, the real-time translation with the glasses.
Yeah. Okay. Hmm.
Yeah. I think, you know, you said when you prefaced that you think AR is going to be bigger than VR, that maybe that's not from a money perspective.
Oh yeah, I'm actually not sure how you guys think about this. I'm thinking from an everyday use and also from an user adoption perspective. I believe, but if you bring a VR researcher in here, they will say VR is the future. So I say AR is the future because I'm like an AR focused, I would say, researcher. Yeah, I do. Money wise, it's interesting, right? So the biggest problem right now is there's no ecosystem on the Ray-Ban. Like we can't actually develop anything for it, and so it's bad for research, it's bad for product. Like if you had a cool idea for an app, you would have to hack some. Yeah, I don't think you can actually do anything right now. Also, don't have a display, a visual display. We always expect to have some kind of like visual display. We have played around with a lot of other glasses. Kind of X-Ray, for example. We can create apps very quickly for X-Ray, but it's like 360, no camera, and it's paired to your phone. Uh, the Epson Moveria or Blade or whatever, they do have some cameras. They don't have a camera, but they have a display. They have speakers. So like I feel like, why don't you just give me one thing that has glasses, a
You
visual
saw
display?
you
Yeah.
saw the Chat GPT patent that went on Twitter, LinkedIn the other few days. Did you see that one? The headset that they're working on, maybe?
So I only know that, and I never bought into it. Like a few months ago, or maybe now it's a year, there were like all kinds of like branded ChatGPT glasses, and they're basically just like
Right.
take a picture, have
But OpenAI
ChatGPT.
is doing it themselves as a company.
Okay, I did not. So what do you guys think about that? Is it anything different from what we've seen before?
What's everyone's vision for AR? These like because this is a new trend really with Meta in the last year. Yeah, I'd be curious what people think from like I guess a developer perspective and then also just a vision perspective. You know, is this gonna be like an only less than 2 year thing, and we're all living with glasses that are smart AI enabled? James, go for it.
I don't know. I don't know if it's gonna be 2 years or 4 years. But I definitely am really excited to see what OpenAI is going to do with their kind of like hardware, because I think as software, even though I know people are like DeepSeek, better performance at lower cost, but honestly, ChatGPT, it has one, the name recognizability that's like kind of like how Meta was able to kind of get their foot in. Everyone called it an Oculus for the longest time, but it's still like the most recognizable. Um, and also, it's just the AI model for ChatGPT has gotten so advanced with the multiple models, the voice model, the real-time voice model, the real-time video model. It's just crazy how powerful it is. I think bundling that into something outside your phone is they're probably the only ones that can do it, honestly. Because we all saw what happened with the humane pins. Like that was horrible. They're totally shutting down already. um, but
Actually, the AI pin, yeah, I don't know where that went
no,
into the
yeah,
bin.
they just sent out
They
an
just
announcement
yeah,
to
they just
everybody.
liquidated.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
Really?
servers aren't going to
Okay.
work anymore. It's like a dead brick,
But is that
basically.
so? Is that what you guys are hoping for? Is it like did they make some money and at least some people happy now, or is it like the whole thing just fell apart?
they sold for 80 million to Hewlett Packard, so I think the founders probably did amazing and the early team did amazing. Maybe not in
But
a
you wouldn't call it a
cash.
success, huh? You wouldn't call it a success from an
A VC
entrepreneurship.
would call that a huge waste of money. The founder's
Okay.
family would call that a great success because now the founder
Woo!
has a great job and probably a little bit of cash up front. But I mean, I think it like that AI stuff is really overlapping with these glasses pretty quickly. It seems like,
Mm-hmm.
like I
Yeah.
would love a pin if that pin actually worked. That'd be amazing. So I'm sure what you're saying with glasses is probably going to be existing on Meta Ray-Bans in 2 years, where everything I looked at, I can get context for. And not only that, but I can say like, store this to your memory, and show me at 6 p.m. a visual of this or whatever it is. Right. Like I think
Mm-hmm.
these glasses are going to be pretty powerful.
Yeah, that's a typical use case, and I mean, I've seen prototypes of many of these things. I think the timeline 2 years is very reasonable because like the Aria 2 glasses were just announced from Meta, their research prototypes, but they're like basically a little bit ahead of the Meta Ray-Ban. And from a capability perspective, maybe, but not like it doesn't feel like a product. It's like it feels very researchy. And previously it was just a data collection device. Google Astra. It's interesting. Like so I used to make this joke a few years ago in in school, in my AR/VR classes. Who do you think is going to win the XR war? And at the time, I thought Amazon is actually going to be a major player because of the cloud infrastructure and all that kind of stuff. Because I thought that was going to be an AI, and I thought that was going to be very important. They don't actually have, as far as I know, a product in the Echo glasses. I've never played with them. I don't know what they can do. Maybe somebody Echo frames, I think they're called. But I feel like they're like from
Amazon
a
has Echo
Amazon
frames.
has Echo frames, yeah, and so
I didn't know
from
that.
it's based on Amazon Echo, which and I think that what I liked about the whole kind of like smart speaker stuff is like within the Amazon framework, they had this idea of developing skills, and skills are like little apps, but they're like they work like little modules, and they can actually work together. And so like from a I felt like from a how they think about the future of AR is not going to run one app, like it's not that you're going to have lots of little things. It's going to be modular. It's going to be customized. You want to have maybe temperature, email notification. You want to have a call with Don while you're on your bike or something like that. And so there's going to be a lot of like the it's not going to be window based. I don't know exactly how it's going to be, but it's like anyway. And so the skills idea I thought was interesting. Like you can load abilities onto your classes, and then but I don't think they're there yet. But like anyway, so this Amazon thing, I'm not sure. I do think I thought Google was dead for a while. Like I was actually, I'm not sure anybody's. I hope nobody's like offended when I say with this, but I have a my prediction is that Google is actually going to be a major player soon again with the Astra coming out, which is basically ChatGPT in their version of it. Um, right now, I feel like there's this AI war going on. Like we have this better vision model, and we can produce new videos, and not all of this is useful in an XR context, but some of it is actually going to be very useful. And so, and then you need the infrastructure, you need the cloud services infrastructure. You need to have like Ray-Ban Meta is basically like this big um, Italian glasses manufacturer that so far seems to be unique to Meta, but I think Apple then wanted to buy into it a little bit and also have some kind of like production pipeline. But if you have like a company that can actually make glasses that look fashionable and don't look like Snap spectacles or whatever they're called from space glasses, but actually they actually look okay glasses, then I think we're game. I think it's gonna happen 2 years. Okay, guys.
I mean, you laugh, but like, frankly, everyone on this call is gonna get stupid rich if this actually works. Like,
No, not
that's
me. Not me.
you
You
will
guys.
inevitably too. Don't you have a Udemy course with like 30,000 students on it? Like,
Yeah.
you'll figure out a way to monetize this. But I mean, that's the like that's the beauty of this and also the downside. But like what you're talking about is so freaking powerful. If I can put on a pair of glasses and that helps me with remote work, you know, like if my glasses was connected to my computer and right now I could say take a note on what Michael just said and it just types it up on my computer and I don't have to touch anything, which is all very technically possible, right? Like there's no reason that can't be done
So
in the next
I feel
18
like
months.
maybe this is wrong, but like I when I see startups and ideas coming out of startups, there's always this idea to try to replace everything. There's going to be this new killer app. It's going to change everything, and then it just doesn't work that way. Like reality doesn't work that way. I feel like my perspective, naive, thinking as a user. And so if you have, if you can somehow get into an existing ecosystem, like if they become available, you can actually develop skills, let's say skills or apps, whatever you want to call it, for glasses, and then become a player in some way. And it's not primarily ad driven. I think the monetary model, like the I also work a lot on privacy and security and ethics and deceptive design and patterns, and so I've done research on that. And so like there's a lot of things that can actually go wrong. And so I think there would be like a few players that are actually going to be like the good ones. Like Apple, probably people are gonna if they do pick it up again, don't know what they're doing right now. And this is just based on rumors. I don't actually know anything internally. But if they do come out with glasses, I think people would just believe that they got the security right and that they would Apple wouldn't do anything evil kind of thing. And so with Google or especially Meta, you don't know. Like I feel like they're willing to take some sacrifices. And so like who's gonna be maybe it's gonna be like app development these days. You kind of like have to have your thing and then you have to get it out onto this platform and that platform because there's gonna be all of these competitors. Um, and the startups that maybe some of us are building here in the room, they either die or they will be bought and eliminated, or they actually will be promoted internally and then they become a thing. But I don't think that happens very often. So, for example, I know of a startup, not sure how many of you know of this. It started as a research project. It was a really cool research project. Two research papers came out of it. Room Alive and a Lumi Room. The idea was to extend the TV into the living room with projection-based AR and so spatial AR or projection-based AR and create cool experience. So they created a product called Lightform. It was a projector unit with kind of like had like projector augmented reality. You could project onto buildings. So then who are your users? And so I think it became primarily the creator community and the artists and like who does projection mapping and blah and how big are those projectors and whatnot. And then Amazon bought them. And then I was like, oh, that's cool. I mean, if Amazon buys you, it's probably good money.
But you
And
know, it's funny, like the projection
it's dead
mapping,
now. It's
the
yeah.
projection mapping expertise could be used to like, help improve the efficiency of a manufacturing floor so you know where to
Yeah, or
walk.
warehouse. Like I think
Right?
that's
Yeah.
how they might use it internally. They just absorb it. They maybe build it into their warehouse to help guide the robots or like whatever, guide workers, make it safer. But like it's not, I don't see it externally facing anymore. It's like when you go to Lightform right now, it's just gonna be, it's gonna say we got acquired or something. And it's been 2 years. And I actually met the owners there at Meta. I mean, one of them is at Meta. And so um yeah. And so
So
I don't
you're
know. The cycle seems to be that.
right. Your
Um,
point is around the cycle. It's like, hey, yeah, these are all great ideas. People can build this stuff, but there's not really a platform to build for right now because
yeah,
Meta's not
nobody
out
wants
there. Apple,
to.
yeah.
So I got excited about an Android XR. Like, so Android XR was announced, and kind of like this, it's the Android way of doing things. We're gonna kind of like provide, we need partners. So we have Samsung, we have Qualcomm, we have Google, we give you Android XR. And so I got excited, but the first things they push out is virtual reality headsets. Like there's like I read some things, of course, that there's gonna be some AR soon too, but like as long as it's like more like an open XR style, but like Android XR and VR, I just simply cannot get as excited. But like when it actually enters um, the AR era, and there will actually
Mhm.
be glasses that kind of feel like Android, uh, where you can maybe go through like you develop an experience for Android XR. Maybe there's going to be like some before you get into there's probably going to be some App Store model. I don't know. It's probably going to be the same because that's what feels familiar to us, and that's actually good money for Google and stuff. And then maybe you can get into an ecosystem, and then maybe you can actually find adoption. But right now, I don't know what you could develop. Like if you had an idea for an app, not hardware, but for an app, like a service or something. Like I don't know what you can do on the AR side right now. It's like, hmm, there's no way. We prototype our little thing. Like in research, I can say, wouldn't this be cool if this were the future? So I'll prototype this in VR, and we can do our user studies, and we make it good and blah. But like, I cannot deploy it. I cannot sell it. There is no ecosystem, and maybe this will change in the next 2 years.
There's
Yeah.
only, you're right. There's one ecosystem to extract value from, and that's Meta Quests, which is, 85% VR and like the occasional mixed reality demo. Um, and I think your point on Android XR is actually quite interesting. It's like, I think it's the right way to look at this because probably the Android headset that they're working on, I assume, is going to be the next platform because it'll be the most comparable to Meta's. Um,
Mhm.
so I think you're right. That's probably the place to position yourself in front of is the Android XR wave and try to get in with Google. But again, we don't know how far along those headsets are. There's no confirmation whatsoever from my understanding. Please correct me if I'm
Mhm.
wrong from anyone on the call.
Yeah,
They're
we've
doing a
been
headset even.
we know of rumors, and we know of maybe Samsung
Right.
is gonna do something, but I think it's VR initially, and I think there will be some Qualcomm. I mean, if Qualcomm actually produces headsets, this could also be interesting. And
You
so
were
with these things, like the problem is like really, how do you get as sophisticated hand tracking as like Meta? I mean, they have hand tracking models. They're extremely sophisticated. They're reduced bias. They work on a lot of different colored people, different hand shapes, different contrast, background. They were terrible in the beginning. I have some very skinny students in my lab and just didn't respond to them, or I have all kinds of people from all over the world, and it's just designed for white people with big fat hands or something. That's what it felt like in the beginning, and so it's really advanced now. And so how do you actually keep up with this? You can probably so I would buy Ultra Leap because they have like the Leap Motion, which used to be this kind of like USB stick and sensing and
saying Google,
windowing.
Google would buy Ultraleap to compete
Yeah,
to
I
compete.
guess so. Maybe. I mean, I would do that if I had some money. I would buy Ultra Leap,
But
and
I
I would
think the
probably
the thing that bothers me is like you said earlier, you have 25 headsets in your classroom,
yeah.
and at any given point, only 18 of them work for the students.
Correct.
Like that has
Yes.
nothing to do with hand tracking, you know? It's like fix that and then worry about the hand tracking. Like the reason
Actually, a lot of it is like stupid account management through Meta. There's always
yeah,
something
of
going
course.
wrong.
It's miserable to get onto a headset like way
Yeah.
before the hand tracking. So I think that's a fundamental problem. All right, so let's
Hmm.
go back to this OpenAI thing. I think that's really interesting. Does anyone have
Yeah.
a thought or vision on where this goes? Like I think OpenAI would if I just purely take my imagination and think what would change all of our lives for the better to the point where we're all raising millions and making millions and Michael's got his course on Udemy selling like hotcakes, whatever. Like the thing that would
It's Coursera, but
actually,
yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
Coursera, the thing that would
Okay.
actually change all of our lives would be OpenAI releasing a pair of smart glasses or something in the space. Does anyone else have a vision or a thought on what would be like a big accelerant that is somewhat realistic? Yeah, just feel free to speak up. Chris, Mike, go for it.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah. I mean, we've been looking at this because I think the biggest focus that we see everybody focused on, as we've all just been hearing now, is the hardware. Because that's the sexy stuff, isn't it? That's the cool stuff. That's the bit that gets us all going. Wow, what's the new gadget? What's the new glasses? And it's all blurred out. And I've got about 7 headsets behind me. I've got some Nreal glasses that I plug into my laptop. I've probably been there, had them all like most of us. And it's cool, it's nice, it's the unboxing bit that you get excited about. But as we all know, and I'm showing my age here, but back in the day, there was 2 providers of a games console. One was the Game Boy, and one was the Sega Game Gear, I think it was called. And that really was the better device. But the one that won was the worst device because it had one thing that we all wanted to do, and we all wanted to play Tetris. It was the thing that finally got us sticky to have that mobile gaming in our pocket. And it was worse than all the other gaming devices that were at home and everything else. And I still think that's where we still haven't hit. We've had the odd success with Beat Saber for gaming and things like that, but I still think we haven't hit the really sticky apps that everybody really wants to go in on a daily basis. And I think this is where OpenAI, and certainly, and I'm going to do the plug for people who don't know what we've been doing, but a few years ago, we looked at exactly what you've just mentioned there, Don, and was, how do we step away from just being in Meta's camp and how do we step away from just being an Android camp? So we said we wanted to build a streaming platform for enterprise VR. So that was everybody who wasn't really focused on entertainment, but everybody who wanted to build better education, whether it was, healthcare, automotive, all those different subjects, and build a platform that felt a bit more like LinkedIn for VR, where all the developers could create those apps for education or enterprise, upload them, whether they were built in Unity or Unreal, and then distribute them to any headset through the cloud. So then you weren't locked into buying, you'll probably know, Michael, that some departments have gone off and bought Picos or HTCs or Metas, and you've got a bunch of different departments. But if you could access the same app through those same headsets and you weren't locked into downloading it and working through their ecosystem. So that's what we went off on a bit of a mission. And things slowed down because developers were really nervous. And everybody we spoke to said, well, we're going to build our own platform. So everybody's wanting to build their own thing. So this is where we start to think, well, while we're waiting for everybody to catch up with us, can we use OpenAI, generative AI in those terms? So we looked at ChatGPT, and being dyslexic is a godsend for me. I can write what I'm thinking, and ChatGPT AI figures out what I actually meant. It takes my Northern English accent with my dyslexia and converts it into international English, and it's amazing. And then you've got the likes of DALL-E and Midjourney. And that's a bit of a bugbear for me because I'm a CGI artist originally. So that takes away some of the skills that I do on a daily or have done on a daily basis. So what we wanted to do is say, well, could we build a Gen AI tool that allows people to develop who don't have developer skills, don't need to have developer skills, and generate 3D content directly into Unreal Engine. And that doesn't have to be in a headset, as you've said, Michael. It could be across anything from a laptop, And even just recently, we looked at these smart boards in classrooms. Why couldn't the teachers use a smart board and ask for it to be generated on the smart board? So that's where, a bit long-winded, but that's the journey we've been on. And that's what we've literally just built at the moment, where we can generate a 3D model through a voice prompt directly in the headset. And I think the more of those tools we build, the more it will allow end users to play, and it still has a reason for us big developers to develop the curated stuff, but allows people to get used to the tools. A little bit like how we use our iPhone to take photos, but we haven't eradicated the professional photographer.
Michael, we did an avatar event last month. We have one upcoming too, but Chris and I sat at a private little tables avatars, and this is when he first told me about it. But yeah, I think like this is the pattern you see from so many people is, okay, how do you build something that's effective for smart boards, iPhones, web, VR, Unity? Like it's got to kind of, I mean, obviously there's exceptions to everything, but that seems to be a big trend and a smart way to go about this, Chris, is kind of become agnostic. Okay, so your vision is less about betting on one outcome or the other and more about, hey, let's just be ready to service wherever the world goes. And then Mike, what were you going to say around your vision for where you think this is going in the next few years? And then we'll give it back to Michael.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I don't want to go too much, but just to point out that at a much higher level, it's just kind of a win for all of us. It's not so much that Google's getting into the hardware manufacturing game. That's like for Samsung. What it really means is that this is a reference design, in much the same way that Microsoft has that, and obviously Meta suggested the same, that their OS is open. So it's really more of a win, and I think a signal of that eventual horizon where we do get the perfect glasses that we want and they work great. But that's still debatable when that timeline actually happens. So, but it's just a really good signal for a healthy ecosystem.
Michael, Michigan Michael.
I mean, I think, initially it seems like you're trying to, like they held onto everything. We want to control it. It's Android based, but it's like it's our Quest OS, our Quest operating system, and it's just us. And then we bring out all these little devices. There's Pro for enterprise, cheaper, and 3S even cheaper. And then they're like, okay, what's the next thing? And the idea of making the OS open, I think it's interesting. I'm not sure like who it would reach. Like here in the room, does it enable any of us? It does send a good signal.
Like Mike
But
said,
yeah, but like, does it actually enable? What does it actually enable? Probably maybe other companies to. So does that mean then I can use that OS on my device? But like, does it actually then? I feel like, so I went to a conference once, and we all had like papers in the session, and they create these papers to be like topic oriented. So like I had like one session with 4 papers in my session, and they were all very similar. And so we all had like cool ideas, and they were a tiny bit different, but like none of them were amazing. And so like, you enable this by you're basically allowing other people who build hardware to benefit from your maybe OS. But like, to me, it's actually a really smart idea from Meta, because it's like, if there's anybody out there, then please use my OS, and then we'll know. But it doesn't actually really, because most of the hardware, if you like a new hardware, I feel like it's usually bad. It's like it's not really advancing. So like, I'm not sure what comes with US, but if there is, I guess there's also an idea with like some kind of like ecosystem app store kind of thing. That, I mean, if it then allows you to hook into devices that come out in the future, maybe it makes it more attractive. Like, what I haven't really figured out yet is like what that move actually means. Like, it sounds cool. It gives it this like this altruism touch. Like, oh cool, there's gonna be more open, it's gonna be more like the Android way of things. But like, I'm not sure yet. I haven't seen like plethora of new things. But like CES, like or AWE, when you go to these things, I always feel like I see things that I've seen like 10 years in the past in research. Like I feel like, okay, this is now because I only went before the pandemic. So when I went before the pandemic, they always showed you like you can look under the hood of like your motorbike or your car, and you have like X-ray vision kind of thing. And I'm not sure what they show now, but like none of these apps are actually useful for the end user. I feel like they're maybe in an enterprise context, and maybe that's cool, but like I haven't seen actually anything. Anyway, so I also don't know what's the really good strategy to enable more players. I do think OS is one thing. What I would really like is more like a hardware and become like the Ray-Ban, for example, if they allowed us to create new experiences, maybe hook into the AI pipeline, allow new services. I feel like that would enable more rapid try and die or live kind of experiences, because I feel like a lot of this is going to be iteration. And like if all of us have to build our own hardware first before we even have a chance, then I don't know. The streaming approach is really interesting that Chris was talking about. I used streaming in two ways in the past. One was to work around a lot of limitations. So for example, I did a lot of web-based stuff. WebXR, I had like Mozilla was really supportive for a while, and then they like died more or less throughout the XR team. But in the browser, everything is constrained. Like for example, eye tracking in the browser, you can't really couldn't do other things. So we built like ways to stream. I remember I built like one experience, and also the phones got really hot, like with some of my 360 prototypes of the past. And I remember I was basically getting like the coordinate system from the headset and did the composition on a laptop, and so you would like do like a cross-device kind of streaming between laptop and smartphone. And I thought this is a good way to develop XR experiences. Like I don't think immersive authoring like Shapes XR is really that good. It's good for prototyping, but like really developing logic is tedious. So you want to go to a desktop. And so, but then the desktop you always have to preview. So I like this in tandem approach. And so we used this streaming solution. And I thought it had a way to work around platform limitation. It made you more agnostic. And I think that's really cool to hear that from Chris. This kind of approach.
That's his insights around the, being agnostic. So whatever comes, he's prepared for.
Yeah, and then the other thing is like, I think industry doesn't want to be agnostic, right? It seems like it's more like marking my territory. Like this
Yeah,
is
but I
Meta
think
and this is Apple.
to your point, like what we all should be hoping right now is that behind the scenes in Samsung's factories, in Qualcomm's factories, they're all building some sort of, Android enabled XR, because that really is the next unlock. Like that's the
It could
next
be.
unlock.
Mhm.
When I was at Meta, that was right when Pico was really accelerating stuff. And so literally
Mhm.
what they would do is Pico would reach out to companies we funded that we didn't sign the right agreement with, to where it limited them from taking money elsewhere and duplicating the app. And so Pico would like spend, a quarter of the amount of money and get the same experience that Meta had funded, right? And like then the founders would go over and reproduce their product on Pico for a tenth of the cost to Pico and get the exact same product. So probably we're gonna see the same stuff with Android XR, where like a lot of these leading apps that are on Quest will be ported over. Now, some of them have contracts around that prevents them from doing that. So it's not gonna be as easy as it was back in the day. But like probably that's what's gonna happen, I would bet. And Google is way more likely to do that type of a thing than Apple is. Apple's very closed. They don't really care what's been built. They just want to build it themselves and control it. I think Google's going to be much more open, to your point, Michael, of stealing.
Well, Apple is still controlling a really big ecosystem. It's like if you're an Apple fanboy, you have the watch, you have the phone, you have the laptop, you have the TV. It is actually interesting. They can actually achieve a lot, Apple. Not so much cross to other platforms, but like to an end user that is adopting. I think Apple glasses. I mean, I've seen patents. I'm not sure that's true, but any kind of extension of an iPhone, like the iPhone becomes the battery, maybe even the compute, maybe even the rendering engine. I always thought those things were exciting. To be honest, I really love Daydream I thought Daydream is so cool. So this was like you put your phone in the thing, you get a headset. I actually thought like a few years ago, if you had brought me here, I would have said, I think it's cool. We just like mobile is really cool, but then now you can like wrap your phone to like a little headset, put it in your head. You can do tasks in an immersive way, but then you take out your phone again and you walk somewhere. And I was a really big believer in this flexibility and like kind of like Swiss Army knife kind of thing. I do think another thing we'll see over the next few years is because these glasses are hard to produce, what actually needs to go in the head and what can be in other places. For example, your wrist. So wristband style interactions. Um, we've experimented
Just
with this.
saw or apparently Meta Orion. I just saw an
Yeah.
article yesterday has like a neck tie or something you put around your neck. In addition to the
Oh,
bracelet, there's also some neck thing. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I was reading yesterday.
I haven't heard of that, but okay. So, but
Yes,
you know,
Meta's gonna choke everyone.
it goes with my theory. Not everything has to go on your head, and yeah, that's interesting. I need to look this up. This sounds cool, though.
Zuckerberg's got a button and he clicks it. Oh, everyone just starts getting choked.
But that's not so good.
Yeah. Give me your data. Yeah. No, but I think it, it's I personally like if I was building VR AR right now, I think you either got to go really deep into games on
That seems to be, clearly there's money there. Or
gotta go figure out like how do you get involved with an Android XR, an Apple, or even a Visor, like something on that front, and then try to work into their ecosystem. I think those are the two best like bang for your buck when it comes to leverage on your time opportunities. If they're gonna work out and you get those to me those seem like the optimal ones. Or you do the agency model where you're building enterprise products and you're not, trying to raise a ton of venture for that.
I had one question for you guys. I mean, I probably had a few, but like one that was so. For example, Pico, right? Like the whole Chinese market. Do they have a presence here? Is that some? Could you imagine funding? Like I don't know. Like how does that work? Because there could actually be significant movement also in China over the next few years. And I remember I was at Meta when Pico was becoming a thing, Pico 4. And then boss said like, whatever, try it out, it's not that good, blah blah. But actually, I think they were like, and then the Apple Vision Pro came out, and we were like, and then they said, it's not, nobody's gonna buy it, it's too expensive. Um, and it's true, it died. So like, I don't know. Personally, I think I will continue to believe in the AR space just it's really interesting from a research perspective. You have an interface always on your head. There's so many interesting issues you have to solve, societal issues, technical issues, user experience issues. So it's super interesting for me. VR, I feel, is very advanced. Like, I mean, there's people who really believe the haptics should be better, but like, what else? I mean, the audio is good, the rendering is good, the affordability is good. Like, I don't know how much more movement, maybe more. Like, pancake lenses were cool, and like making it, lighter and more comfortable, and so that kind of stuff is cool. May increase adoption, but I do think ultimately my bet would be on AR. I understand from an investment perspective, I guess from an entrepreneurship perspective, it seems pretty tricky right now, like this market and like what to do, who to support. I also think that I've been to a few of these pitches when like people pitch their new ideas for their startups because I've written a few startup proposals. Um, and like I feel often they lack a little bit of innovation, or they're like trying to. The ambition seems to be milking some cow or something, but not really like advancing the state of the art. And so like I don't know. It must be really frustrating from your guys' perspective because I don't think there is. Well, I think we are all enthusiastic, and I think something is coming, and it's happening. It makes sense. I've I've been stuck with doing research in the space for the last, I think, 6, 7, 8 years now. I have never studied an interactive technology that long. I've done tabletops, they died. I've done multi-touch before that. I've done body-based interaction, Kinect style interfaces, and all of these became kind of like commonplace or like died. AR VR is actually really interesting, and it's gonna stay around. So I'm really positive, but like from the entrepreneurship perspective, it seems like really frustrating. I must believe it's frustrating for you guys.
Let's get
And
responses to that. I'd love to hear people's thoughts because
yeah, just like give it to me.
it's an interesting observation from your perspective. All right, I'll shut up. Anyone thoughts on that? Come on, James.
Are we all too embarrassed to talk? No, I don't know about y'all, but I've been waiting for this to become a thing for the last 6 years. You know, my second startup, tried to get into training a little early on the VR before it was really adopted. And now like switching into entertainment. Now we're seeing a lot of changes. I feel like every few years we're always saying this is the year it goes mainstream. I do think somewhat it might be appropriate to temper expectations and realize that, you know, not every technology, despite how cool it is, will fully go mainstream. I think, like we talked about, AI probably has a stronger potential with XR. I like VR. I'm gonna keep doing my thing and carve out a slot for myself, even if it's not, you know, the biggest thing in the world. But I do feel like it's consistently been growing. We've consistently seen more investment. It's just really long to adopt a new technology. You know, it's not something that happens overnight. So yeah, it's taken 6 years. It'll probably take 10 years, but yeah, I'm in it for the long run. I'm a true believer.
Hardware is also really hard, really hard. I mean, just put this in kind of like I had the good fortune of starting on and developing the Kinect. We knew exactly what we were building, and that timeline was so far out, it was crazy, but we knew exactly what we were building. And you know, it's not coincidental that that team went on to be the HoloLens team. I then went to Belgium and worked because I caught the bug developing depth sense hardware. 14 years ago, we developed that. The timeline for this stuff is outrageous in hardware, and it's incredibly hard and time consuming. So I think so on the one hand, it's frustrating because you're like, why can't I just have this right now? I know it, right? I've got it right here. There's 10 manufacturers who can put this together. It's just not that simple, unfortunately. So, but I think, you know, again, kind of like I was saying before, the signals are all there. The technology is obviously getting there. It's the worst it'll ever be the way it is now. Technology doesn't go the other way. So it's a good future. So, you know, is AR going to finally take off from 2030? Probably pretty good bet, you know. But, you know, who knows? A lot of things can change, but just don't underestimate the difficulty of hardware. It's insane. It's
Great
really
perspective.
insane.
That's a great perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I also feel like, you know, having worked a bit on Connect and then a bunch on HoloLens, like there's going to be a point in time where we are post phones. Like that's not going to be the dominant mode of interacting with computing forever. And there will be something that comes next, and it's just a matter of like, you know, when we're going to get there, how quickly we can push that hardware. And it is a long process. And like, if there's anything that's just so mind-blowingly good for the mass market that everyone just has to have it now. And in the chat, James mentioned the VHS versus Betamax format thing, and like, I mean, not to be flippant or crass or anything, but to be honest, like one of the big deciding factors in that battle and several other format wars has been adult content. And that's something that we haven't really seen a lot of on these platforms. So, you know, I think there's still like tons of opportunity just for like a big mass market kind of application.
My dad did tell me once he bought VHS for that purpose back in the 70s or whatever it was. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And that's why it won out, right? Because like Toshiba was willing to work with those companies, whereas Sony wasn't.
Interesting. That was whatever it takes to get this thing across the line. I'm for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
man.
That is interesting. That's do you think that we do you think like, some of the stuff I invested in, like one of the first, I think it was the third investment I ever made was Vicarious VR's 2016, March 2016, something like that. And they had the New York Times and, whatever, Wall Street Journal. And it was like, we were creating, the new journalism, right? And it was like, they had these customers and you could go into this 360 world and you could experience stuff. Like I've heard that idea a trillion times in 10 years. I would argue we're still not one iota closer to that vision after 10 years. I literally wasted 50 grand 10 years ago and I don't think we're one. So like, is this like, what needs to happen? I still don't know what needs to happen. I don't get it.
You've got to look at things though. If you look at the last 30, 40 years, we had big brick computers, 70s and 80s, and then everyone had a dabble in the 80s on smaller home PCs. It was only really 90s we started to get them on desks at work and lap them the odd brick laptop. It was only really those early 2000s that suddenly the internet started to become a little bit more mainstream. I remember starting my first job at Rolls-Royce late 90s, and we had one computer in the corner of the room plugged into what was the internet, and we all had to share that out of 20 people. So it took 25 years just to get to that point. It was only then the next 10 years to 2010 that suddenly the internet took off. That device became even more useful and became mainstream. And then 2007 onwards, we all got our iPhones. And from there, we've spent the last 15 years suddenly using it. So if you look at that time frame, I think if you're honest about it, we're all probably way too impatient to what if we've seen in the past, how long it's actually taken. My biggest upset was, being selfish on my own. I was seeing the streaming thing we were building, hoping Apple was going to build some slimline glasses that would not be slim enough to do it on their own, but would plug into their phone, as I think you said, Michael, to use the power of the phone. Qualcomm has already built the 5G capability into the XR2 chip, and that has already been working since 2020. We had a device from them as a prototype that would talk directly to 5G, so we didn't need to hop onto the Wi-Fi. So there's all these elements that when they come together, suddenly everything will work. But we've got bags of bits here that, like you're saying, we've not got the content, we haven't got the right devices, and we just all need to keep working. But some of us, and if not all of us, maybe not the ones that end up being the successful, that end up, and it could be another decade off. But if we don't all go at it, it'll never get there in the end as well. So yeah, it's not a nice thing to say, and sometimes you have to tell yourself just keep going. And one of us, if not a few of us, will be the ones who break through that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I feel better now. Listening to you guys.
Hey, you started this, by the way.
I mean, it's good to have some, bring back some historical perspective and setting expectations. And also coming back to what James said earlier, second startup. I mean, that's cool. I think keep going, man. It's cool because I do think we are all here. I think we will all be right. It's gonna I don't think it's not gonna happen. And it's actually probably gonna be big even. And it's gonna be interesting. It could be one of those things. I think Microsoft may make the same mistake again. Remember Bill Gates? What's Bill Gates the most angry about? The Windows Phone was crap and it was too late. And now they laid off most of HoloLens teams. And I knew most of the people actually working on Connect Fusion in Microsoft Research Cambridge in the UK. And Richard Newcomb is one of them, who is actually behind Aria glasses at Meta now. And so the talent is it's still in the industry. It's actually really cool. So there are a lot of people who probably will make this work. And I would just, I would agree with you guys are cool. I'm just like, okay, let's just wait a little. It's gonna be fine. Yeah, I think I'm definitely gonna keep doing the research because I feel it's very exciting. It's a lot of students who are very excited about this stuff, and of course mixing it with AI. But also AI has become so much more usable. You had to be like a little crazy person before, and now it's just like it's so easy to build and mix it into things. There are of course still there's still actually real infrastructure concerns, like what Chris was talking about. Like I don't know, in research I can always dream about the future. Then we figured out 5G and all that, it's gonna be everywhere, blah blah. But we do have low compute. Like and your research thing that I've been thinking about is like how little AR could we actually get away with to still feel like we have an AR experience. I think it's interesting because it doesn't have to be the fancy game style fairy tale figures coming out of everywhere. In order to provide value, you need to understand the context. You need to have a display. It doesn't have to be necessarily a visual display. It can be an audio display. And you need to bring just in time right information access to users. And the blind and low vision community, for example, is really excited about Ray-Ban. You can actually, I have a blind colleague, he keeps telling me about it. We went to a conference together, he used it in certain scenarios. We will see a lot of maybe experiences that I don't know how often this has happened to you. Something is presented to you and you feel like, this is not cool. It's not even VR, it's just 360. Like you say something like this because you know what the capabilities are, but actually they made the right decisions in terms of like a trade-off. Like if the experience you want to create is like some kind of like, let's improve our job training skills, or like how to go through an interview. You don't have to have like this super duper VR experience. A 360 is just fine. And so I think maybe like the Apple Vision Pro I would never have done. To me, it was aiming too high for not like for it's okay, it creates Apple value, but it's just like too high end. It's just too crazy. And they could have like the Quest Pro was exactly this idea. What if we actually build a really expensive device? Would anybody care? And turns out maybe not. and and we can do a lot even without eye tracking. On the AR space, I do think we need eye tracking. Like if you cannot really provide a really good AR experience without kind of like it really makes a big difference. Like head movement versus eye movement and understanding the world, and the context is narrower. You know what the person is looking at when they ask the thing. It really makes a big difference. You can provide better value. You don't always have to want to hold the object up to your camera. What is it? And so anyway, so Don, this has been cool because I feel like you guys are really like a nice group of people, and we are all little enthusiasts, and you have your own really cool experiences. I have a lot of respect for people who go through the entrepreneurship side of things. Um, we have been, we are like, what we were doing is maybe more like non-profit stuff, like children in wheelchairs. We built like this interactive gym for them using augmented reality, floor projection stuff, and it allows them to compete with each other. And it's like an inclusive environment. Those things are kind of like cool. So I can create value now for people. Not I cannot create money, but I have a little playground and I'm happy right now. I feel like you guys are all happy with what you're doing. We're all hoping for something bigger. Um, but I think if we met again in 2 years, it would be interesting. Like, why don't we schedule this? It's probably going to be fun.
Yeah, 2 years, you can come back and we're all having this exact same conversation where everyone here is called in from their private jet.
Yes, I think you will. I was
probably one of the two results. Yeah.
Yeah,
Jeff,
cool.
Jeff will have a maid to do his dishes. He won't even need to have those gloves on that he's got on right now. Yeah, Michael, we appreciate it. We're all here because we believe in VR as a medium, and like whether that's enterprise or VR, B2C or gaming or streaming, whatever it is, we believe in this as a next medium. And so I think, it's interesting to hear your perspective because everyone here is building companies, but you see the frustration. I mean, I'm frustrated. I think everyone has some frustration around, but also none of us can control things you can't control. And so the frustration's a waste of thought, right? And so it's purely just about how do you keep going? How do you make money? And figure
Most of the time I'm excited, but I don't have this additional pressure that many of you guys have. It's like this seeking success and hoping for success. Like I'm fine. I create talent, primarily students. Like that's my output. My research papers are fine. They give me some, they're good for my ego, but actually creating student talent is cool. Come if you have any like, hey Michael, could there be a student? We have this like summer thing. It would be cool if Don, you could facilitate if anybody wants to reach out, or like if I can find out more about any of the things you're working on. I think my students are always interested, so that would be cool. And yeah, otherwise, I think we should meet again next year. Let's just do a reunion.
We can do an annual check-in, and then one of these times we'll all be rich. That's exactly the right way to do it. Can I share your email in the chat with everyone if they have?
Do you have it? Or do you want me to type it? Or you got it?
Yeah, if you could type it, that'd be great.
Oh yeah, I'll type it.
Because if you have talent and they're looking for something, this is definitely the right group. If the students are really passionate about XR, then they're at that top 10%. This is definitely the right group to bring them to. Okay, cool. We'll put in the chat if everyone wants to copy and paste that.
I think I wrote to meeting group chat, which is I think all of us, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think everyone can see it. Yeah. Awesome.
Cool.
All right, Michael, thank you very much. We appreciate the time. We will do this again. Hopefully, let us know when you're doing, like if you're publishing research or stuff, all that stuff is cool for us to read. We all love reading it. Like you talk about how people here are doing entrepreneurship. The whole reason I got in VR was because of research. It was a book, Infinite Reality by Jim Blaskovic from Stanford. Like that was the reason. So it goes both ways, right? That you're inspiring founders, and founders help kind of guide what you're doing.
Yeah, little students, and then one day they may become founders, and then maybe they'll be rich one day.
Yeah, you should give $100 to every one of your students and get equity. You never know.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Okay. Well, okay, I'll hop off now. Thank you all. All right.
Absolutely. Thank you, Michael.
Bye-bye.
Adios. Adios. Nice guy. Really cool. Really nice guy. Okay. Well, next week we're doing a networking event as avatars in our virtual venue. We're going to do that in a similar format to last month, and we're going to start to do that monthly. So I'll send out the RSVPs for that. I'm going to New York the following week, so I'll be there March 20th. If anyone is in New York or wants to go there, I rented out a podcast studio for 4 hours, and so you can come do that with us. We already have Howard's registered, Ash is registered for the podcast. And then if we get enough people, I'll do a in-person something as well at night. But the podcast stuff from 10 a.m. until 3 p.m. is booked. So if you want to come do something in person with me, please feel free. But as far as next week, we'll be virtual, not in person. So I'll see everybody then. Any final thoughts, closing thoughts? Oscar, I saw you come on camera. Or are you just saying hi? All right, cool. All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Awesome conversation. Have a good one. Good luck. Adios. Bye, everybody. Bye, 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 bye.